The Susan Brender Show is a radio show online broadcasted on YouTube across the United States and globally. The show features guests who speak about health, spirituality, entertainment, and a host of subjects to enlighten people across the nation. Listen to the show that empowers women and men alike and highlights those who have made a difference.
I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. Today I have a guest who's been on my show several times talking about the TED Conference. Erik Mintz is currently, though, the founder and CEO of DealCoachPro. He has 25 years experience in the software industry. He spent 8 years at Constant Contact as Director of EventSpot from 2008 to the 15th. Prior to Constant Contact, Erik was the founder and CEO of E2M Systems, which was acquired by Constant Contact in May 2008. And he started his career with IBM, which tells you something about him. It tells you, from my standpoint, that he's a pretty smart guy, and it certainly is. So with that said, I want to ask you, Erik, you started the TED conferences and you've moved along with different businesses. It's been a very stressful year. Have your businesses done well, or have you suffered as a result of what's going on?
That's a funny question. I would say there's mostly a lot of suffering. Interesting enough about my business, so this is my second startup. Philosophically, it's actually helped because DealCoachPro is a sales technology and it's something new, but the core of which is around remote collaboration for sales teams. So from that perspective, it's good timing, but acquiring new customers in the middle of a pandemic is very, very difficult. So, the existing customers that were using it, it was ideal because, and in fact, the usage, the engagement went way up during COVID with the existing customers. So from that perspective, it was good. And those, when you talk to most businesses, I think that they would tell you, especially sales teams, they became more productive because they weren't having the drive to and from work. So I think most businesses that I talk to, and these are mid-tier and enterprise level companies, the mustard's off the hot dog, that there's a definite change in behavior in terms of people working remotely. I think that we're going to see a lot more of that. So from that perspective, it helped my business, and it probably will in the future. But I definitely lost a lot of traction. I had a lot of interesting potential in the first quarter of 2020, and that all died. I mean, 100% of it once COVID hit, and that was tough for us, because we're still relatively new, in startup mode. We're an early stage business, but it's coming back around. Like I feel like our pipeline is starting to finally kick in. And we're really feeling it now this month. So that's exciting. Yeah.
Sounds very exciting. Now, here's the thing. You're an entrepreneur. Many people would like to be an entrepreneur today because unfortunately they suffered when it came to the coronavirus with regard to working for a big company. Companies let them exist, but on the other hand, many did not. So I want you to tell our audience a little bit about entrepreneurship and what that's all about.
Yeah, so I don't want to say I'm jaded, but I am. It's, a startup it's really, really hard, and it can be a lonely experience. In truth, it can be very rewarding. There's no doubt and you always need a little luck, but it depends on the type of person and your situation. So, I don't have children, I'm not married. So it's, at least now, it's allowed me to make decisions that I probably couldn't have, had I had children. I have 2 dogs, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think some of it can be very circumstantial. But, the startup, in the tech startup world, it's it's a grind, every day. I think it can be over romanticized. Like I tell my friends with kids that are in college, don't quit college, finish your degree, get a real job, understand how the world works, and then do a startup. There's very few that, quit college or do a startup right after college and are very successful. I think it's really, I spent 11 years at IBM before I did my first startup. Had I not, had that experience of working with people, all ages and ethnicities, and, I wouldn't have been able to be successful at the startup.
Let me ask you something, Erik. We're certainly going to talk about DealCoachPro, which is your new business. But on the other hand, I'm very interested in understanding. You said that you should start with the company first before you enter trying to do your own company, an entrepreneurship opportunity. But on the other hand, the world has changed, and there are so many different things going on in the digital world. And now we're even hearing about people going up to space. Where do you see yourself, or where do you see the world going with regard to starting a business? Because it seems to me that all the young people, when they're even 2 years old, they're on the computer. So can you imagine when they graduate college, what their abilities are to start a business?
Yeah, so they're clearly having I'm part of, I'm a Gen X, right? I would be an older Gen X. We had computers, when I was in high school, but it was just really at the beginning of it. So a lot of these things are, if you're a Gen Z today, they definitely speak a different language, and they've grown up with it, right? They've grown up with a smartphone in their hand.
That's right.
So, and then you have the gig economy. I mean, that, people are, working a couple jobs, and some are doing really well and some are struggling. So I tend to think, and I don't know, I think it's outside of the gig economy. If you start a company because you want something outside of sort of a one-person show, it's difficult. And I think your circumstances oftentimes will dictate that. You're married, you have kids. If not, it's easier to start a startup, because if you fail, you only have to support yourself, right? But if you've got kids and a significant other, and you fail, that can be I've had friends that have gotten divorced over this very scenario. So I tend to be a little more conservative when I think about people starting their own business.
Well, it's now time to talk a little bit about DealCoachPro, because this is a company that you just started, and needless to say, we're at the cusp of something that sounds great. So tell our audience a little bit about the company.
Yeah, so DealCoachPro, like most technology startups, it comes from some pain that an entrepreneur experienced, and it that's what Ben Horowitz, he's a famous entrepreneur, calls the earned secret. My earned secret was I had an experience with my last company, and with startups you end up wearing a lot of hats. And I was a software developer, and I was thrown into the role of an enterprise salesperson. And I just had no skills. And I was really suffering. And I think the only reason I was really successful in any way is that I come off trustworthy. And that's a good thing. But I don't have that bag of tricks. And I had bumped into someone who ended up becoming my co-founder, and really a subject matter expert in the area of, what they call sales methodology. And he sat down with me one day, and as we got friendly, he's like, tell me your biggest deal. Like, what are the challenges? And he was coaching me through, this deal. And that's when I had my previous company. Then I got acquired, and I was with Constant Contact for almost 8 years. And then once Constant Contact got acquired, I left and decided to do another startup. And I went back to my buddy and said, what's the current state of the art? And it was pretty much hadn't changed, in 15 years. So we created this company called, DealCoachPro. And I've had a difficult time. The product probably got into market around 2017. We ran out of money. in 2018 and 2019, I had a couple customers, and I had just decided, we're going to make this product work for a couple mid-tier companies. If we get it to work for them, it will work pretty much for everyone. Everyone being mid-tier and enterprise companies. It doesn't work in the small business space and in the SMB space. But I did get a little lucky in the sense that, I saw the market very early on. And last year, Gartner, the market research company, came out with some market research that says that the sales coaching got bifurcated. On one side, sales coaching is specific to skills training for salespeople. But the other side of that is coaching is for deal execution. What are the activities you have to do to, pursue a deal? Our entire platform is designed around deal execution. And so the market research caught up with us. And that's a unique place for a startup in that we saw the market early. The market research validates what we're doing. And so in a roundabout way, I'm saying that we've been leading the charge in an emerging category called deal coaching software. And so I'm out, raising monies from venture capitalists and, making this argument. We have some paying customers. We're still early, but we have some paying customers, repeat paying customers for a couple of years. And we're just starting to grow right now. And but we're leading this charge in an emerging category. And that's very exciting. But I have to convince the VCs of this. And that's really tough. It's a lonely experience raising monies. It's very hard. And that's wearing me down. But there's definitely a lot of interest. I have to go out of state. There's very little seed funding in Florida. It's a big gap for companies that, so at the seed stage, you have a small team, you've got a product in market, you've got some paying customers. Now you need money to sort of, grow sales and marketing. And Florida that's a big gap in the seed funding area. So I end up going out of state, even actually, in the UK and EMEA, there's interested VCs that fund.
Erik, you've been part of the TED conference, and you've started actually your own right here in Florida. Isn't that a place where you can kind of promote a business, talk about your innovation, because innovation is a subject that you always have at the TED conferences, and convince people that you have a great business and that they should get involved?
Yeah, the whole idea around TED is giving people a voice who don't have one, right? It's a platform to share great ideas, right? Right. Their motto is ideas worth sharing. So I've never taken advantage of that to really promote DealCoachPro. I mean, we may this year, DealCoachPro may become a sponsor, but I've never really used TED or TEDx Boca Raton to promote my company just because I feel it's kind of a conflict of interest. And anyone that would be speaking, anyone that gets up on the stage, it's not about self-promotion or promoting a product or religion or some type of political agenda. So I guess it's a roundabout way of saying that there are some real guardrails, when you're doing a TED talk. And I've been, pretty disciplined about, staying within those guardrails.
Yeah, but Erik, you talked about how difficult it is to raise money, and everybody knows that. There are many ways that have been done before, but on the other hand, after all these issues that we've been dealing with, people are stuck home, and they didn't, how did they do it? Did they do it by Zoom? I mean, do you get in touch with companies? Do you choose them out of the out of some kind of book or something that talks about the fact that they want to give money? How do you do it?
Yeah, so raising monies, that is one of the challenges, is finding them, and it ends up being more than just a Google search. So there are a lot of places you can. So one of the sources I use is called Crunchbase, and it's very involved in sort of entrepreneurship and who's funding what companies. That was one source of data for me. There was another. One of the guys that works for me is a sales guy, and someone posted spreadsheet on LinkedIn there's literally, across the world, there are thousands of VCs. Obviously I'm just looking for the ones that focus on the US and the UK. And there's probably 800 really credible leads in there. So there's a lot of money out there, but that becomes the challenge is, finding the source. And so between my own network, some of these applications like Crunchbase, can help. It was only a couple $100 for an annual subscription, or something like on LinkedIn has been, this spreadsheet that this guy put out there was amazing. And so, yeah, it's tough, but it starts with finding sources for sure.
When you do find that source, is there kind of again a procedure that you have to follow? Do you have to be a 501c3 or an LLC? How do you do it?
Yeah, so it's different, raising monies for TED, which is a very different challenge than raising monies for a startup. So when you're raising monies, in the US, you have to be a C Corp to raise monies, and it's related to the stock. So I'm a C Corp, and then what I look for being at the seed stage, there's some keywords that are triggers for me that say, they're a good fit or not. Like they do pre-seed through Series A. I look for that, or they like to be the first institutional investor and they get in early. So I tend to look for some of those phrases or buzzwords, and then they'll have different processes for submission. Some will have it'll be online. Some will say have someone make a warm introduction, so you end up on LinkedIn, and that can be a challenge, getting warm introductions. While critical, it can be very time. I've learned this time around, when you're fundraising at this early stage, getting people to make introductions, it can be difficult.
What about the political situation that's going on in this country? There's money out for people who are poor. There's money out for different ethnicities. But what about people like working class people like yourself, middle class, a little bit of an upper class? Does the government give money to people like yourself? Because needless to say, you hear all the time about all the politics that's being played. And I'm curious from your standpoint, whether you're eligible for something that the government can pay for.
Yeah, there was, they had the PPP program, the paycheck thing. And we did get monies in the first round. It's funny, and I can say this, that in the second round of PPP, my bookkeeper, she's like, while you qualify this money, she said, if the IRS ever looked deeper, she said, you would not qualify. Now, the kind of monies that I'm talking about that I would have gotten in the second round from the PPP program may have been 25, 30. I'm sure it would have been under $50,000. They would never come after me. But, the truth is I didn't go after it because I just felt like, okay, my bookkeeper said it's, not morally correct, so I didn't do it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, now this is really funny and in a way kind of entertaining, if you will. And that is that you've also been a producer of a documentary film on the $2 bill. It is called the $2 Bill documentary. Tell us about that and how it came to be, because that is really funny.
Yeah, so I've always had $2 bills, and I couldn't even tell you why at the time. And so when I was at MIT, there's a professor. His name is Dr. Chris No, and one of his lectures, which is on it was on fair value and historic value. And so, as a way of leading this particular lecture, he would get a $2 bill out of his wallet and say, what's the fair value? What's the historic value? Well, he's been doing this for 20 years. Now, this was back in 2011, by the way. Uh-huh. He whipped out this $2 bill, and like 12 people in my class went into their wallets and went into their purse, and everyone whipped out a $2 bill. And by the way, he had never seen this. And I thought it was just me being quirky. I thought, like, I never asked if anyone else liked the $2 bill. Well, that sent me on a 15-month research project and I wrote an article, and it became statistical in nature about what's special about the $2 bill, which was the article. And MIT actually published it, and it got a lot of press. And there was a dude who's a film director who reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, hey, I found your research on doing a documentary on the $2 bill. And he was a real documentary filmmaker, and he wanted to interview me and use my research. Well, it turns out he was literally 5 minutes. He lives down the street from me, 5 minutes away. Oh. So we met at this pizza place, and my research became the framework for how to organize all the stories he had. And then I decided I was so intrigued by the whole thing. I threw some money in and became a producer, and he taught me how to be a producer, and it was a great experience. And then it took him about 15 months to release it. And then we did those tours, the film show, the different film circuits. And it was fascinating. It was a great experience, but that's how it came to be. And then he actually launched it on YouTube, the $2 bill documentary. You can actually see the whole thing for free on YouTube.
Well, get me a little bit of understanding. Is the $2 bill worth anything? Because I have a $2 bill, and I would love to know that it's worth something. Or is it just a $2 bill?
Well, as it turned out, there was a couple reasons why people were holding on to the $2 bills. It was generational. These things had been passed down as many as 4 generations. So they became keepsakes. Some people thought, that they were that there was luck involved with the $2 bill. And so I looked at all kinds of angles. Was there something special about the number 2? And there is. In terms of the value, it depends. When there can be on the $2 bill, there can be strange sequences in the serial number, and if you get certain serial numbers, they can be worth a lot of money. In general, they're worth $2. Like if they were produced in 1976 or 2013, they produced a lot more of them. But the older ones, clearly before 76, they would be worth more than $2. And they've been around since the late 1800s. They've been out there for a long time. So,
well, we're at the end of the show, and as you know, in all the shows that you've done with me, I always ask you for the last word. So is there something you want to tell our audience?
No, I guess, it's great that the economy seems to be coming back, and, I think you still have to be safe, but it's nice to see people sort of, getting together again. The world it seems like we're almost back to normal, or soon to be.
Erik, if people want to meet you, or if they want to get in touch with you, if they want to find out more about your business, and if they want to find out if they can get involved in any way, how do they do that?
Yeah, I think if you just go up to DealCoachPro.com, there's a way, the phone number's on the website, or you can reach me through LinkedIn. That would be probably the easiest way.
Well, my guest today has been Erik Mintz, who is a really amazing guy who helped me particularly get involved with the TED conference, which has been such a great experience. And he is now the owner and operator of DealCoachPro. And I want you to get in touch with him because he could teach you a lot of things. So with that said, thank you, Erik, for being on the Susan Brender Show.
Thank you.